The Dutch colonial empire consisted of overseas trading posts and territories around the world controlled and administered by Dutch trading companies, the Dutch West India Company and the Dutch East India Company, as well as territories administered by the Dutch Republic from 1581 to 1795, and later by the modern Kingdom of the Netherlands after 1850. The use of the term empire in relation to all Dutch overseas activities is debatable, since many of these so-called colonies were in fact trading posts governed by two independent trade companies, the Dutch East India Company and the Dutch West India Company. It was only after 1815, when the British returned some colonies to the Dutch following occupation during the Napoleonic Wars, that the kingdom took over the administration of these territories and officially designated them as colonies. Until recently, Dutch historians were quite hesitant to use the words imperialism and empire. Nowadays, they do use these terms, but mainly in a European context and most often only when referring to the period from 1880 to 1940. The territories that would later form the Dutch Republic began as a loose federation known as the 17 Provinces, which Charles V, Holy Roman Emperor and King of Spain as Carlos I, inherited and brought under his direct rule in 1543. In 1566, a Protestant Dutch revolt broke out in these regions against Roman Catholic Spain, sparking the 80 Years' War. For the Dutch, this war was part of their struggle for independence and religious freedom. Although largely fought on the European continent, the war was also waged against Philip II's overseas territories, including Spanish colonies and the Portuguese metropoles colonies, trading posts, and forts, all of which at the time belonged to the King of Spain and Portugal. Led by William of Orange, independence was declared in the Act of Abjuration in 1581. The revolt resulted in the establishment of a de facto independent Protestant republic in the north by the Treaty of Antwerp in 1609, although Spain did not officially recognize Dutch independence until 1648. The desire to access the rich spice trades of the Indies led Europeans to focus increasingly on exploration. From 1517, the port of Lisbon in Portugal was the main European market for products from India and the Far East, where merchants from other nations came to purchase goods. However, when Portugal was incorporated into the Iberian Union with Spain by Philip II in 1580, all Portuguese territories became part of the Spanish Habsburg domain. As a result, Portuguese markets were closed to the United Provinces. Thus, in 1595, the Dutch decided to set sail on their own to acquire products directly and to establish possessions, territories, and trading posts in Asia to boost their economy through trade. In a period marked by exploration and driven by the need to find an alternate route to Asia, the Dutch began disrupting Spanish and Portuguese trade, eventually reaching as far as the Philippines. Their main focus was naval and commercial, to dominate sea trade in Southeast Asia. War with the Dutch led to attacks on most of Portugal's trading network in Asia, which greatly diminished Portuguese trading power. The grand design of the West India Company also involved directly attacking Portuguese trading power in their colonies in Brazil and Africa, seizing both sugarcane plantations and the slave ports needed to resupply labor. From 1630 onward, the Dutch Republic conquered almost half of Brazil's European settled area at the time, with their capital in Recife. The governor, Johan Moritz, invited artists and scientists to the colony to help promote Brazil and increase emigration. However, the tide turned against the Dutch when the Portuguese won a significant victory at the Second Battle of Guararapes in 1649. Unlike in Asia, Dutch successes against the Portuguese in Brazil and Africa were short-lived. Years of settlement had left large Portuguese communities under Dutch rule, who were by nature traders rather than colonists. In 1645, the Portuguese community in Pernambuco rebelled against the Dutch, and by 1654, the Dutch had been ousted from Brazil. In the intervening years, a Portuguese expedition had been sent from Brazil to recapture Luanda in Angola. By 1648, the Dutch were expelled from there as well. On the northeast coast of North America, the West India Company took over a settlement that had been established by the Company of New Netherland between 1614 and 1618 at Fort Orange, Albany, on the Hudson River. To protect its precarious position at Albany from nearby English and French colonies, which were growing rapidly, the company founded the fortified town of New Amsterdam in 1625 at the mouth of the Hudson, encouraging settlement in the surrounding areas of Long Island and New Jersey. In 1664, the English took over New Amsterdam and renamed it New York. There is more to talk about regarding this important loss, as well as the loss of lands previously gained in South America, but the details behind the collapse of the Dutch Empire and its possessions throughout its existence will be discussed in the next video. By the middle of the 17th century, the Dutch East India Company had overtaken Portugal as the dominant player in the spice and silk trade. In 1652, it founded a colony at the Cape of Good Hope on the southern African coast. Dutch emigration to the Cape rapidly increased as prospective colonists were offered generous grants of land and tax-exempt status in exchange for producing food to resupply passing ships. The Cape authorities also imported a number of Europeans of other nationalities, namely Germans and French, as well as thousands of slaves from the East Indies, to bolster the local Dutch workforce. The Dutch colony at the Cape of Good Hope expanded beyond the initial settlement, and its borders were formally consolidated over time. The colony grew and became highly important as a stopping point on the route between the mainland Netherlands and the trading posts and colonies in the Spice Islands of Southeast Asia. However, problems arose due to the authorities' inability to control their own settlers, who disregarded agreements made with local chieftains and crossed into Xhosa territory, sparking prolonged colonial conflicts with the natives. Many other wars and conflicts occurred in which the Netherlands fought against indigenous peoples. These moments in history would shape the Dutch colonial empire. Some territories were gained. The details of these events will be explained in the video about their collapse. It was only in the early 20th century that Dutch dominance extended to what would become the boundaries of modern-day Indonesia. Although the region was highly populated and agriculturally productive, during the 18th and 19th centuries the Dutch established themselves as the dominant economic and political power on Java after the collapse of the Mataram Empire, which had been a major power in Asian trade since the early 1600s. The Dutch began to interfere in indigenous politics on Java in the 18th century, believing it would improve their role in the local economy. The 19th century is also known as the period in which the Dutch made substantial geographical expansions in the archipelago, driven by the new imperialist mentality. European nations were competing for colonies outside Europe for both economic motives and prestige. An important motive for the Dutch, apart from financial benefit, was to expand their territory in the archipelago to prevent other European countries from gaining a foothold in the region. The Dutch followed Portugal and Spain in establishing a colonial empire outside continental Europe. Like the Portuguese, they focused on small possessions, forts, and trading posts for economic reasons, and did not push deeply into territorial control, likely due to a lack of perceived necessity, as well as limited manpower and the great distance involved. The Netherlands was a small country compared to other European powers. This video was about the ascension of the Dutch Empire, but more details about their struggle to build their empire and its eventual collapse can be found in the next video. Until then, be sure to subscribe to our channel for more history videos and click the bell button. Also, we cannot end this video without thanking our few but very generous supporters on Patreon. Your support is much appreciated and helps our work a lot. We are looking to expand our channel and hire a professional scriptwriter. By doing so, you will receive more videos monthly, both in terms of quantity and professionalism. You can pledge your support by accessing the link down in the description. Thanks for your consideration.